So yeah, today I wanted to do a light review of cybersecurity, some common threats and what we can do against them. And I found this nice quote from Doug Linder, not quite sure who he was, saying that a good programmer is someone who always looks both ways before crossing a one-way street, which makes sense actually, always being aware of where the danger comes or can come and is not expected. So I would just, after this little introduction, say a few words about the history of cryptography, little light timeline and some facts, and review some common attacks, like 8 sources of attacks that are frequently encountered in the past and even nowadays, and some hints if they are to get some protection against them, and then come to a conclusion, of course. So let's go. Some definitions first, because there are usually some mistake or misunderstanding about the words themselves. The cryptography itself is the science of concealing messages with a secret code, which takes everything that goes with, like the design of the solutions, the reasons to do it, the safety steps to take, but not much on the technical execution so far. This step is what we call encryption. That's the technical part where we use machines or codes or whatever else to do the job, actually, to encrypt and decrypt data. And the cryptanalysis is actually the opposite. That's deciphering data and getting back to the plain text message, which is not a part of cryptography. If someone is into cryptography, most of his job is not to break codes, actually. Supposedly to make them and strong enough that the cryptanalysis don't have anything to do. So cryptanalysis is mostly for security or bad hacking reasons. So the reverse way, so to say. Yeah, there are some gaps in the story of cryptography because for a long time it was not such a high topic. But it started very long time ago with the ancient Spartans that invented a system already 600 years before Christ. Was called the C-tail, not sure of the pronunciation. It was basically a wooden stick around which you could wrap a laser strap and then writing a message on the length of the stick. And it was perfectly readable when the strap was wrapped around the stick, but as soon as you remove it, then the message was absolutely nonsense. And you needed on the other end the exact same size and the width of the stick to wrap again the laser strap and read the message again. So it was basically a symmetric system where you need to have both the same information, in that case the size of the stick, to understand the message. And it was used, of course, for military reason mostly. Then in 60 before Christ, there is the very famous Caesar cipher, which is well known in the world now, which was quite strong for the epoch it was made, without computer, without mathematic degrees for everyone. So it was actually just moving moving the alphabet 3 letters, so to say, 3 characters, no, 3 symbols, sorry, forward, meaning like A would be written as a D, a B would be written as a E, C as a F, and so on, looping at the end, of course, which was, well, quite simple, but if, as usual, if you don't know the key, then it's unreadable for the external source. But as the same works as well, if you know the key, then there is no code anymore, and it could be also cracked by some smart smart people, because three characters is not a big change actually, and you can still recognize some patterns. But yeah, it was used for a long time during this epoch. Then there is a big gap because apparently cryptography and secret messages was not the main topic in the Middle Age. Seems so. But then in 1553 appears the first encryption key from Giovanni Battista Bellazzo. I think it's like this, which was the first occurrence of an agreed keyword, sorry, that both sides needed to know. So yeah, it's basically the first symmetric key ever. Then in 1854, there is the Playfair cipher from Charles Wheatstone, which was basically encrypting still, but two letters instead of one, which makes the code a bit harder to crack. Then came in 1917 the Hebern router machine from Edward Hebern, which was a pretty advanced machine using one router to embed the key itself and making it change on every character that was typed. So it was pretty strong encryption already. And then from this arrived the famous Enigma machine from Arthur Scherbius. That was using actually the same mechanism but with several rotors instead. That what was making it much more powerful actually. The same machine was actually not decoded but understood, so to say, from Polish engineer Marian Rejewski in 1932. He understood already how the machine worked technically without knowing the key or the ways to get the key, but he understood already how it works. And in 1939, he shared this information with some allies to find a way to crack the code, which was the job of Alan Turing and some other smart guys from this epoch. And the rest we kind of learned in history. Then in 1945, Shannon wrote an article that was called Mathematical Theory of Cryptography. That was the starting point of modern cryptography. Shannon did a lot for IT and communication. He's well known for many other things, including the very basic schema of communication, sender, emitter, channel, reception, and so on. And he also was the one who made the word or the term of bit popular. He's the first one who used it in a wide way. And we also gave his name to the unit, the measure unit of information, of technical information. So he did some good stuff for information technologies. And then in the early 70s, started the first groups of cryptography from IBM, and not only. And some standards appeared for cryptography, like the DES, that was well known, and adopted by the US in 1973 as a main crypting system. They got cracked in 1997, actually, now, so it's not to use anymore. In 1976 appeared the famous, even though the name might not be, Diffie-Hellman key exchange, which is basically the system of public and private key that we are still using nowadays. just to make it quick, there is one public key and one private key that work in pair, and one can decipher what the other encrypted. And so every emitter has two keys, one public, one private. And the public key can be known to everybody, that's the purpose, and the private should never ever be transmitted to anyone. It's really private key. And the two main usages, I would say, is encrypting a message and make sure that nobody else than the recipient can read it. You do that using the public key of the recipient that you got from the public places, and then you make sure that only the recipient with his private key is going to be able to open the message, to read the message. And the other way around, if you want to ensure that the message comes from a certain person, that person can sign with his private key, and then anybody with the public key can decipher the signature and make sure that it comes from the person that has this the private key that is associated to this public. Those are two very common usage of keys. And then in the year 2000 came the replacement of DES, which is AES, the Advanced Encryption Standard. And a bit later, there is the ECC, elliptic curve cryptography, which is the base of many things we know nowadays, like cryptocurrencies, secured messaging systems like Telegram, Signal, even Facebook is using it, I think. So yeah, it's kind of the current best security system to protect information. And later will come the quantum computing, in which I'm not going to dive because it's a bit complex. But globally, the power that it brings will be able to break many of the big code system we have so far. For example, this RSA 248 is expected to be broken in about 13 years. So it's something big enough. Good. That was a bit long intro, but yeah, let's go through the attacks themselves. The cross-site scripting, XSS, is one of the most used attack that we can face. Approximately 40% of what is noticed. The concept is simple: is using a vulnerability on the website to send some script, some content that's going to be executed on the client side, and making it vulnerable to expose some data, to steal some private information, or even to alter the page and then trick the user to give details himself, or going to the wrong target. Like it could be close to phishing, actually, in that case. And yeah, to just avoid this, there are some firewalls, web application firewalls, that are preventing the execution of such scripts from an external source. And all of us already came across this coarse error saying like, no, you cannot execute that, even though sometimes it would be legit, but yeah, it's for security. Most of the hosting solutions that you can find are actually offering that already, so it's really well known now, but still exists, so be careful. Injection is also an old-fashioned thing, but that still works. It's a whole category in which the SQL injection is the most famous, I would say. The same, it's about sending some code that will be executed, but on server side this time, using user inputs to breach into the algorithm of the server side and start executing some unwanted code. There were some very famous examples in SQL, for example, where if the input of the user is sent directly into the query without any protection, then you could technically write, instead of your input, some SQL code, breaking the first query and chaining to another one that is completely independent, and both would be executed on the server. As long as the first one that you broke is not failing, then you can achieve some very nasty outcome. So basically, the main goal is to get some access, or to change a bit the behavior of the application to get more from it. Actually, it's just an entry point. Protection, of course, is having clean inputs from the user, avoiding at maximum to bring the inputs directly into the APIs and the system itself. Using type checks could help, knowing what you expect actually from the input, and prepared statements that are more and more common now on the SQL management, or the database management alone. So yeah, it's also well known, and there are protection nowadays. Fusing or fuse testing is normally a method that's used from developers to test their own code or their own platforms, which is basically sending lots of random data to the website until it crashes, or at least close to crash, and then using some tools to find the weak spots and where it failed actually. So that's basically a security step that is normally used during the dev or the test phase. But of course, it's simple, so it can be used by hackers too, and exactly following the same pattern, like crashing the website and trying to find the weakness themselves to exploit it later. Protection for that, well, can keep the system up to date to just avoid at least the well-known breach from the platform you are using, from the language and from anything else. And on the server side, I would say just keeping a good eye on the metrics and trying to detect such attacks if they happen, basically. But yeah, that's pretty much of it. The Zeroday attack is kind of a bit like the fusing attack, but in the difference that the attacker doesn't need to find the weakness. He knows them already. This happens usually when there is a security patch going to be released. There are two scenarios. Either it happens before the release, and the attacker had to know already the breach, the weakness that will be corrected, and is quickly attacking all the targets before the patch release. Or it can even happen on the day itself, which is Zeroday, when the patch is released, so there is no leak of information, so to say, that the attacker is just smart enough to get the patch notes as early as possible, and using it to attack all the system before they actually start their update round. So the obvious protection against that is just keeping up to date the system as soon as the release patch is done, as soon as we hear about it, and maybe also proactively looking for such updates just to know when they will arrive and when we can get protected again. Then the traversal, parser directory, is another type of attack that again comes from the input. So there is a lot actually that comes from the inputs, user inputs. So there is a lot we can get easily protected if we cover this part correctly. But yeah, in this case, it's actually using the input to try to move in the root of the web server to access the physical files actually directly on the server. There is a very simple example. If in the URL there is the name of a file, if there is no protection, basically nothing prevents the attacker to put some double dot slash in front of the name of the file and changing the name, of course, and reaching some private information like config files, password files, and so on. That would be one level above and not protected from this. So yeah, it's again to just to get access to information and data to later do another attack or another hacking usually. So again, sanitizing the inputs and checking the path internally on the server side can be a very strong protection against that. And as usual, not rely too much on the user input because that's where many attacks are coming from. The next one is a very well-known attack, which is for this case not targeting hacking, so to say, or less. It's more to really do some harm to the target by putting the website down via a lot of simultaneous requests, thousands or even millions sometimes. That's the DOS, actually, the denial of service. And the distributed comes when they are using thousands of infected computers that don't even know that they are taking part of this to do it. So it's a distribution of the attack. I would say it's, as I said, it's used to just make the target lose time, money, or to break the access for a certain amount of time, or just to show that the attackers are here. There are many different purposes for it, all nasty. But it's more for this than finding a breach, even though it can also be used to distract the security and trying to place another attack that we have already seen before, and not attracting the attention on this attack. So to protect from this on the performance side, using CDNs or load balancer resources that are scalable can help reducing those peaks and downtime when it happens. And firewall, application firewall next to it to just detect the other attacks that could happen at the same time. The next one, man in the middle, is a very old method. And as the name says, it's about putting the attacker between the communication between two people or two entities, so to say, and pretending to be each other's interlocutor for both of them. It's used since decades already, I think, since electronic information existed. So it happens usually when the communication is not encrypted, which is not always a failure of the communication. There is a part of communication that has to be non-encrypted to establish actually the key and the codes to exchange in a secure way. Even using keys, there is a part of the early steps that are not encrypted. In that case, it's important to have also authentication protocols to make sure that we are talking to who we think they are. And yeah, as usual, as for many other methods, the point is to just get some sensitive information, data, password, login to just access later the same system. And the last one is the basic brute force attack, which is also called sometimes a dictionary attack, because it relies on having a large amount of login password that leaked on internet or that were even guessed by systems, by automatic systems before, and using them like repeatedly as long as you can until you find one that works on the target. So it takes a lot of resources. They are using many computers, like most probably the hacked computers that we already saw in the DDoS attack, to just try and try and try again. So this one is kind of easily avoidable by strong passwords policy, because it would take too much time for even for a net of computers to break a strong password. And two-factor authentication can also help a lot against a repeated attempt to log in. So yeah, as a conclusion, there are a few points that we can keep updated on to keep the system safe, like technologies evolution, patches, updates, of course, as soon as they are ready and available. Configuration, system should be well adapted to what we want to do and not giving too much access rights, for example, or just keeping the size according to what we want to achieve on a resource point of view. And also regularly checking logs and alerts, because there we could also detect an early attack and prevent it quite early. So good monitoring solutions is also a very important step to protect our systems. And with this, we are done. Thanks for watching and listening.